Ami vetted 3 ring sellers with a spam score too: 16%, 26%, and 44%. Then, out of curiosity, I ran the same check on my own domain: 48%. My own site scored worse than every single seller I had been sizing up, including the one I had almost walked away from. That number reset how I think about vetting entirely, and it is where I want to start, because it is the thing that stops you using these tools like a purity test. Why the authority score is the wrong first question. When you ask a link seller for their numbers, the first thing they send you is an authority score, some 0 to 100 figure from whichever tool they subscribe to, and it is the least useful number in the entire conversation. I have 3 purchases in front of me with ranks of 307, 210, and 464. The best of those 3 numbers belong to the placement that took my $150 and never actually published. The worst of them shipped clean do follow with the anchor I asked for, from a site with nearly 8,000 referring domains behind it. The score predicted nothing. It is also the number most easily inflated, which is precisely why it leads every pitch. The 4 numbers worth pulling. So what do you actually pull? 4 things, and you can get all of them from a backlinks AP for roughly 5 cents a domain, which is a rounding error against the $100 placement. Referring domains, meaning how many distinct sites link to them. Total backlinks, which is a different number and usually much larger. The spam score of their own backlink profile, and the topical area those referring domains sit in. 5 cents, I want to underline that because people skip betting on cost, and the cost is nothing. What people are actually skipping is the 10 minutes of thinking afterwards. What spam score actually measures? Here is what that percentage is telling you. It estimates how much of the stuff pointing at them looks automated, low quality, or bought. That is the whole scope of it. People read it as a verdict on the seller's honesty or as a penalty risk score, and it is neither of those things. So a high number means their own inbound profile is messy. That could be because they bought links badly years ago. It could be because they are a big site that attracts scrapers and directory clones automatically, which happens to absolutely everyone at scale. Or it could be because they run a link farm. The number cannot distinguish between those 3, and that is the limitation nobody mentions when they quote it at you. The 44% I bought anyway. 44%, by a wide margin the dirtiest of the set, and going in it had felt like the safest purchase on the list. Real company, real product, an audience I actually wanted to reach, a name you would recognize. I bought it. I decided the audience was worth the mess in their profile, and I would make that call again. What I would not do is make it without seeing the number first. That is the whole function of vetting. It does not tell you to walk away, it tells you what you are buying, so that when a placement underperforms you already know why, and you priced it accordingly. And then my own site came back at 48, which brings me back to the self-owned. 48% on my own domain, worse than every seller I had been judging. Why? Because that site had been leaking outbound links for years and had attracted the usual sediment of scraper sites, aggregator clones, and directory spam that accumulates on anything that has been online long enough. I had not bought a single bad link, it just accumulated. So if I had been applying a 30% cutoff, I would have rejected myself. I would also have rejected 2 of the 3 placements that turned out fine. Use these numbers as pricing information, not as a gate. A 40% site should cost you less than a 15% site. That is the correct response to the number. Refusing to transact above an arbitrary threshold just means you buy fewer links at worse prices from sellers who have learned to game the metric. Referring domains versus backlink count. Pick one that trips people up. A seller will quote you 677,000 backlinks, and it sounds enormous. It usually is not. The site in question had 7,800 referring domains behind those 677,000 links. That ratio is normal. One site links to you from many pages, so the raw link count inflates fast and means very little. Referring domains is the number with signal. If someone leads with total backlinks and gets vague when you ask for referring domains, that gap is the answer. The relevance check no tool does for you. No AP will tell you whether a link makes sense. You have to look. Open the page they are proposing. Read it as though you were a visitor rather than a buyer. Would somebody reading this genuinely want the thing you sell? If the answer needs a paragraph of justification, it is a no. My two that shipped went onto a page about automation tooling and a page about IP lookups. I sell mobile proxies. A reader on either page could plausibly want that. I did not need to construct an argument for it. Relevance is the factor that has survived every algorithm update anybody has written about, and it is the one vendors will quietly ignore because their inventory is their inventory, and they will place you wherever there is a slot this week. Name the constraint in the order and be willing to wait. Read the page's outbound links, one step most people miss entirely. Before you buy onto a page, look at what else that page already links out to. If it already carries 11 do-follow links to gambling sites, crypto exchanges, and essay writing services, you are buying a spot in the link farm regardless of what the domain metrics say. One commercial link surrounded by editorial content is a very different purchase from the 12th commercial link in a row. This takes about a minute and no tool required. Payment terms tell you things. I sell placements as well as buy them, so I see both sides of this. On my own sell side right now, one buyer paid within 2 days by invoice and the link went live the same week. Another has been awaiting a transaction hash for several weeks after asking for crypto terms. A third asked for a quote in June and has never sent back the target URL. So from the buying side, read the same signals in reverse. A seller who insists on crypto upfront, with no invoice and no company name, has removed every mechanism you would use to get your money back. That does not make them dishonest. It does mean the delivery risk is entirely yours, and you should price the placement as though there is a real chance it never appears, because sometimes it does not. 39% of one of my purchase batches was money paid for a listing that had not gone live 8 days later. So ask the question nobody asks. What happens if it never publishes? The answer you want is a refund window or a replacement placement of equivalent value. The answer you will usually get is a friendly reassurance that this never happens, which is not a term and cannot be enforced. Small publishers rarely have a refund process at all, because they have never needed one. Avoid them over it and you would cut out most of the good inventory. Keep your individual orders small instead until somebody has delivered for you once. I now treat the first purchase from any new seller as a test order, regardless of how good the metrics look. A smaller placement, a lower price, and no expectations. If it ships clean and on time, the next order can be the real one. Get the renewal killed in writing. Listings and directory placements are usually sold on a term with automatic renewal. That is where budget quietly leaks 6 months later for something you have forgotten you own. Cancel the renewal before you pay and get the confirmation in an email you can find again. Not a support chat message. An email that says the renewal is paused and you will not be charged. In 6 months, a different person will have that account and the chat log will not exist. The terms to write down before money moves. Vetting the seller is only half of it. The other half is vetting the deal. And this is the part that gets done over chat and then forgotten. When I sell a placement, the terms I put in writing are the ones I would want as a buyer. How long the link stays up, whether the article can be rewritten or retorted in that time, exactly where in the piece the link sits, and what the anchor says. A real example from my own sell side. One buyer paid $250 for a do-follow placement on a comparison article. The terms were 12 months, no rotation, and a specific position in the ranking, second place, in both the list and the summary table. That last clause matters more than people realize, because a comparison article gets rewritten as the market moves, and without it, your paid positions quietly drifts to 7th on the next refresh. So ask for the duration, ask what happens on a rewrite, and ask where in the page you sit. A seller who will not put those in an email is telling you the placement is disposable. What to do in the first 10 days after paying? Vetting does not stop when the invoice clears. Put a reminder about 10 days out and check 3 things when it fires. That the page exists at the URL you were promised. That your link carries no nofollow or sponsored attribute, which takes 30 seconds in the page source. And that the anchor text matches what you ordered. Because when an agency's writer produces the article around your link, the anchor is the thing that most often comes back as your brand name or as something bland instead of what you specified. If any of the 3 is wrong, raise it immediately while the article is fresh and the writer still has it open. A month later, you are asking a stranger to edit a published page as a favor. What I skip now. After doing this enough times, here is what I have stopped bothering with. I no longer care about the authority score at all beyond the sanity glance. I do not ask for traffic screenshots because they are trivially faked and everyone knows it. And I stopped trying to negotiate hard on price with small publishers because the ones worth buying from are not short of buyers and the discount is not worth the relationship. What I always do is the 5-cent data pull, the 1-minute look at the page's existing outbound links, and the renewal email. The whole checklist as a one-pager lives at thisodesk.com. Subscribe for SEO that has actually